Hi, everyone. Welcome to Wine.com Experiences. I'm Gwendolyn Osborne. This is going to be such a great experience today. We are going to be tasting wines from Il Palagio, a Tuscan estate owned by Sting and Trudie Styler. And both they and their international sales director, Tony Sassa, will be joining us so that we can taste and talk about this beautiful property and the beautiful wines being made there. Thank you so much to everyone who submitted questions. We're going to try to incorporate as many as we can into our conversation today. I know a lot of you had birthdays and anniversaries today, so happy birthday and anniversary. That's very exciting. Thank you for joining us. If you have the wines, you purchased the wines ahead of time from Wine.com, please go ahead and get those open and into some glassware. We're going to be tasting all three today. If you don't have them, this trio is still available on Wine.com, as are many other Il Palagio wines. They are all absolutely fantastic. The three wines, the three Il Palagio wines we are tasting today are the Roxanne Bianco, the We Dance Chianti, and Sister Moon. So now let us introduce our guest. Joining us from England, we have Trudie Styler. And from Il Palagio, we have International Sales Director Tony Sassa and Sting. So welcome to all of you.
Thank you, Gwendolyn.
Thank you. I'm so glad you have taken the time to be here to speak with us. Hello, Trudie. And hello, Sting. I know Trudie's blowing a kiss to Sting, not me, but it's lovely to see you. Thank you again so much for taking the time. We're excited you're here to talk about this story from this beautiful property that you have breathed life into. So I kind of want to start at the beginning of you finding this place, because it comes from this wonderful villa you've owned for about 20 years now, give or take. And I know you had fallen in love with Tuscany beforehand and were looking for a place for quite some time. So were you looking for an estate, and Trudie, maybe you can speak to this, were you looking for a place with a vineyard that had winemaking potential, or did that end up being an added bonus?
I don't think we were. Trudie and I were just looking for a house because, as you say, we loved Tuscany. We spent a lot of time looking, and they would present us with these marble mausoleums in Florence that looked like they were made for dead people. And it was a more difficult task than we imagined. And then we were almost giving up. We'd looked for almost 10 years for the right place. And then on probably the last day we'd have looked, we found this place, although I think it found us. And it was a little bit run down, and we didn't know it had a vineyard, but we fell in love with it immediately. And it was owned by a duke whose family had lived there for hundreds of years. And he had to sell it, and one of the clinchers, he asked if I wanted to taste the wine. So I said, of course I did, and it was a lovely red wine, and that kind of sold it for me, that it was a beautiful house, a little bit run down, but it had nice wine. So we bought it, and then a couple of years later, I tasted the wine again, and it wasn't as good as what the Duke had given me. And then the farm manager said, well, that's because he gave you a Barolo. So we both decided that we would get our revenge and grow a really good wine in this property. And that's in fact what we did over the last 23 years. It's been an act of active revenge.
That's well done. Swindling Duke you get the last win. So you did decide to invest in this land, and there's more than vineyards. You have these beautiful olive groves, and you have the gardens. But then, of course, the vineyards, which were a lot of work. So I guess that sense of wanting to do well there is what, here's the beautiful gardens, and then you have the vineyards, and wanting to do well is, to prove that Duke wrong is, did you know how much work it was going to be?
Yeah, we didn't go into this naively. We were warned that it would take a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a great deal of money. But it was you could see the potential. And after 23 years now, we are starting to realize that potential. And both of us feel very happy and very heartened that we actually did it. Trudie, as she'll tell you, was a farmer's daughter. Uh-huh. So she had a hand in the land and the soil. She knew the value of treating the soil well. She'll tell you more about that than I can. But we think it's been time and money well spent.
Yeah. And Trudy, did you love that part of it? Kind of taking that, as we mentioned, we talked about, we call it a green thumb, and in England they call it the green fingers, right?
Yeah.
And so did you love kind of transforming that land and being a part of that?
I loved it. Well, it's a joy to me. I've always had a confidence with gardening because my dad was a farmer in Second World War, so he wasn't called to action, but he was called for the food effort. And when we were little girls growing up, we all had a part of the garden that we were that he made our own. So I grew lots of vegetables and some flowers. And it's wonderful to see our daughter Mickey has taken over this. She's living in Vancouver right now and has rather a large vegetable patch. So it's sort of like, I do think that teaching kids about the value of the soil is really sort of like a basic educational right for our children. And I'm so fortunate that Harry, my dad, gave me that. So when Alan and I started to talk about Il Palagio becoming an organic vineyard, in fact, he had some biodynamic principles, but it's largely an organic vineyard, that it wasn't something that daunted me. It was something that I really literally loved, putting my hands in the soil, and we could feel how dry and powdery, and it needed to be nourished with some better drainage, and the soil needed to be enriched. So Alan, God rest him, gave us a lot in those first years from 2002 till our first vintage in 2007.
And when you did first start to replant and make the vineyard, did you also know that you wanted to produce it, I guess, commercially, where you would be selling it to the world? Or did you ever think of just keeping it for yourselves?
No, I think that we did think that we had enough acreage that if we made it well enough, and Alan had, of course, you know, a very strong following with the Benzinger estate that he'd transformed into like a very successful biodynamic concern. So because we had him in the first instance, we felt very confident, just like now we're with Riccardo Cottarella, we feel like we have an excellent winemaker, and in between the amazing Paolo Cocciogna. So we've had a great trio of team leaders.
Good. And so one question that we got from a lot of people who were able to submit questions before coming in today said they wanted to know what your favorite wine was, or what you normally drank before you invested in this property and started making Italian wines. Were you already a lover of Italian wines? Did you like French wines? What were some of your go-to favorites?
Is this for Trudy?
Yeah, well, sorry. Bing, do you want to talk to that? Sorry.
Yeah, well, you know, I come from a beer drinking culture. I didn't drink wine until I was into my late 20s, where, you know, I'd play shows and the promoter would leave a nice bottle of wine in the dressing room, usually like a Petrus or a Chateauneuf du Pape. You know, I found out later that this was really good wine. I used to leave it for the roadies until I visited one of my roadies' houses in New Jersey. And he said, "Do you want to see my wine cellar?" And he had this amazing collection of wine. I said, "Where did you get this?" He said, "I got it from your dressing room over 20 years. But I did develop a taste for it, you know, when I did start to drink the wine that was left. And so I had a taste for good wine eventually.
Eventually, and now you're making your own wonderful wine. And I know that we talked a little bit about that, but organic farming. And so that was Alan's goal, but you've been organic since the beginning, correct? Why was that important to you, Trudy?
It's important to me because we see when the soil gets corrupted with you know, GM, we're no longer confident with when I started to having children, you know, the first thing a mum thinks of is how do you nourish and nurture your child? Well, the answer is that you want to give them the best possible start in life. And the best possible start in life for as far as I was concerned was having some control over the source of the food. And so organic, when I became a mum, was incredibly important. And so I drew on Harry's foundations of the soil and what to grow and what to give the kids. And likewise with wine drinking, that I'm much better off drinking a wine that's organic, or at least that has been sustained very well. And so I normally go for the lighter wines. I like white wine, for instance. I like Vermentino. We're going to be putting Vermentino into our vineyard under Ricardo's baton, shall we call it. We're going to mix up music and wine here, but we're going to, I'm very excited too that we're going to create some great Vermentinos and some sparkling wine.
Ooh, that's exciting. Well, Vermentino is one of my very favorite grapes also, so I'm thrilled that that's part of the vineyard. But I know that this was also, when you came here, as kind of a refuge for your family and Sting. I know that you've created and recorded songs here, many in the past couple of decades. But one thing that a few people wanted to know is, has the place inspired any of your songs, any of your writing?
Yes, we are sitting here in my studio in Il Palagio, which is above the wine cellar. So below us are all this beautiful oak barrels, and a bottling plant, and you know, the vats are all there. So I think some of the vibration from the studio goes down into the wine. Now, I've no guarantee that it's going to make the wine better, but we try. But I do feel that there is a kind of creative symbiosis happening here. Because for me, you know, a good wine is similar to a good song. A good song has to tell a story. A good wine has to tell a story. It's a narrative that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And within those three sections, I think, first of all, you need to feel comfortable. You need to think, oh, I think I've heard this before. I recognize where I am, or this taste, or this sound. And then you need a surprise. So each section of the song or the wine needs to have that sense of comfort, that sense of recognition, and then a surprise 3 times. So by the end of the song or the end of the wine, you've been comforted and you've also been surprised. This is our aim. Now, whether we've achieved that or not is another matter, but that is what we want to achieve. It's what I want to achieve in songwriting, definitely.
Well, I love that. And I love that you brought in that connection between music and wine, because also I know that all of your labels, or most of the labels, are named after songs. So is there a connection between the song and the style of wine? Or are you just trying to say it's good wine, it's good music, and they go well together?
One of the sort of meta stories of the wine, and in fact my music, is a romance. Mm-hmm. You know, I write about romantic subjects, and wine is a very romantic subject for me. So calling our wine When We Dance invites all kinds of stories around the wine. Sister Moon is one of my songs. You know, when we first started, we were a biodynamic operation, and we planted by the phases of the moon, and that to me was a very romantic idea. Roxanne is, for me, one of the most romantic names in history. Roxanne was the lover of Cyrano de Bergerac, where I named the song after that love affair. So there's a lot of romance. You know, Trudie and myself have a long-term romance. We've been married 28 years now. Congratulations, darling.
Is that close to that? And is that today?
Yes, that's our white wedding.
Goodness, it's lovely. And so a happy anniversary. That's wonderful.
In different countries tonight, but you know, that's normal for us.
It's okay. It's okay. I've been there, and I'm only on 12. So, but congratulations. That is quite a milestone. So why don't we start tasting some wine? We are starting with the Roxanne Bianco white blend, but primarily Vermentino, which I also love very much. Also this Roxanne, beautiful love story, great Steve Martin movie. Also song has a lot of memories for me growing up. So this is a great wine. But Tony, do you want to talk a little bit about the flavor profile as we taste through it?
Yes. Vermentino, Roxanne, it's 100% Vermentino. Soil, it's, let's say, limestone. clay and sand. That means this limestone is, actually retain the water. That means even in these vintages, like 2020, very hot vintages, we are lucky because we still have some sources of the water. Now, when we smell, and I say wine is something very personal in the end, but you can recognize this white fruit, white peach, hint of the almond, little bit of the sage. And if we taste, aroma is beautiful. Good body, structure, and a sapidity. This is what I like in Roxanne. This acidity, which we can say we can match with any kind of the food, or we don't need any food. I think it's a perfect wine just to drink. I call for 4 seasons wine. No, there's no summer, spring, autumn, and the winter as well.
That is beautiful. I sometimes think of wine in seasons also, and you're right. This is an all season. I love that acidity. It just makes my mouth water.
Yes.
Quite beautiful. And Trudy, were you happy with this white wine and your Vermentino?
Yes, no, absolutely. And I think that Tony has just made a point that, I think that that today's drinking, we go to wine bars and we're not just drinking, a cocktail, we're drinking, we're ordering wine ahead of food. And so it has to have this acidity that sort of provokes the appetite, but it doesn't sort of like get you, like lay you low too quickly, so that you're ready for food after a couple of glasses. And it's also great summer drinking when the weather is very hot, and I can start drinking a glass of white wine twice a day. I sort of feel just before lunch, and then when the day is done in the office, that we've had a tough day. Our assistants and me will sit down and we'll go, okay, it's wine time. So that'll be around 7 o'clock where we'll have a couple of glasses, and then we'll go to dinner. But I think it's now with our current times, we're enjoying just wine on its own, so we don't want to get too sort of drunk too quickly, right? So I'm much better with the light whites. They're like the Vermentinos, and I feel very good the next day.
They're enjoyable for the lunch or the apéro, or those long days when it's very hot or difficult at work or home. So, but this is beautiful. I love this wine. It's a wonderful finish. So well done. I know Roxanne also has a red wine, which is quite good as well. But the first red wine we're going to taste is the When We Dance, which is a Chianti, the heart of Tuscany, Sangiovese, the grape. Tony, tell us a little bit about this.
Allora, When We Dance Chianti, it's Chianti Colli Fiorentini, predominates Sangiovese, almost 90%, Canaiolo and Colorino. Canaiolo here is a little bit cutting the corners of the Sangiovese. It's very common to be used in Tuscany. And Colorino is just a hint of the color. Now, very particular thing about this wine, and I will say maybe even the problem, because you just don't want to have only one bottle in your home, because it's so approachable, so friendly, and elegance, which are reflecting really our soil, because the soil is composed by the sand and the clay. We never go over 13 and a half of alcohol. And it's kind of the wine for friends, family, parties, and can be matched with any kind of the food. I just chilled. I always say chill for 10-15 minutes, a little bit in the regular refrigerator, and it's perfect.
We suggested that to everyone before this too, to bring it to that cellar temperature, so it's refreshing and very pretty.
Do you agree with me about this elegance and this soft tannin, this approachable?
It's approachable. It's refreshing for a red wine. It's not too heavy. I would. This is the kind that I think you would just kind of serve around the table with a family, where you're telling story after story. Getting late into the night, you just keep going bottle after bottle to continue on. That's this kind of wine.
It is the family's favorite wine. All the kids, the kids love this.
Favorite wine.
Yeah.
Because I know you both do have those giant family dinners now with children and grandchildren, and probably in the Tuscan home, and it must be so nice to tell stories and share these kinds of
Never have less than 30 people at our dinner table. I know some of them.
That's good.
That's the old barrel room that is now a dining room. It's so wonderful. You feel drunk as you're going in there. The vapors are still there.
That's beautiful. What stunning lighting too. Yeah, this is a lovely Chianti. I think it shows those classic characteristics of Chianti, but it's just perfectly integrated with the flavors and the structure. So that is, you can see why you need more than one bottle around. So we can move on to the Sister Moon, which I love, and I was going to ask about the biodynamics that led to the naming, but you already kind of spoke to that, Sting, of just, Sister Moon and biodynamics do plant along the moon cycle, as well as some other practices. And this is a super Tuscan, so it's a blend of the Sangiovese, which is the classic grape, but also 2 international grapes, Cabernet and Merlot. So Tony, would you want to tell us a little bit about the flavor profile as this comes through?
Sister Moon, it's a limited edition. We produce about 1,000 cases per year. It's kind of the wine to make allocations because we sell everything. Vintage 2016, as you know, actually spectacular vintage, probably one of the best vintages in the last 20 years. Mm-hmm. Wine now at the moment is showing a little bit young because as you can feel when you taste, then tannin, it's still pretty big. Now, I always say, you can keep, people don't like to wait. If I tell them wait 5 years, they say, wait 2 years. It's really, I say, it doesn't matter actually. If you like the tannin into the wine, I think this wine is perfect with any kind of the meat. And I say I will call even wine for the meditation, because after the dinner, people like to open these big, bold wines, sit, have the chat, and maybe cigar. I don't smoke cigar, but I see the tendency actually to go to the cigar.
I think going back to the analogy with storytelling and songwriting, this is telling me a complicated story, a complex story, a ruminative story. So if I want to think after dinner, I will sit with this wine, I'll put some classical music on or write a song, but it is telling me a more complex story than the When We Dance.
Yes.
And so you need time. You can't just rush this wine.
Yes. It's wine. When you open the bottles, you have to give the time to the bottle and to yourself as well. Obviously, typically you can feel here a little bit of the chocolate, tobacco, vanilla. We have all these notes at the nose, but we can say in the mouth, you can feel the complexity of these wines.
Yeah, it has a lot of complexity. And like you said, Sting, it's a thought wine. Some wines are just easy to drink but this one doesn't require it, but I think it begs for that appreciation of the layers and the complexity to it.
Intellectual wine. Sorry to interrupt you. It's quite intellectual wine because you see tonight, we could sit for another hour, chat, and try to analyze.
And in another hour, this would probably taste very different with as it opens up, which is why that becomes so interesting. So Sting, do you often have a glass of wine while you're writing?
Of course I do.
Of course you do. Just curious, you had mentioned you'll take this, after dinner to write a song.
You're allowed when you're trying to create. The creative process is a very mysterious one, and so sometimes a glass of wine can open a door that perhaps wouldn't have been opened otherwise. So I'm grateful for this atmosphere, this environment that I'm lucky enough to be in, where I can make music, make wine, taste wine, walk in the fields, see nature at work. I'm very fortunate, and so I appreciate that. I don't take any of it for granted.
Good. It's a beautiful wine. It's a beautiful place, and it's beautiful music. So they all come together. So do you have any? And Trudy, maybe I'll ask you: do you have any favorites other than this delicious Vermentino we're tasting, or is it more like that you make wines that you make? Do you have any favorites, or is it more like children where you just can't really choose?
No, I do have a favorite. Sister Moon is my favorite, just because it was our flagship when we set out. We wanted to sort of like have a wine that was really the expression of this vineyard. So it's Merlot, Cabernet, Sangiovese, super Tuscan, you can say. And for me, it is a romance. It really is the sort of the beginning of Sting's and my life in Tuscany. it always reminds me of the day that we found Il Palagio, the day that we knew it was so right for us. Not that we had any sort of like any thought of a vineyard on that day, but the hope that it would be sort of like a dream come true. And for me, Sister Moon is a dream come true. It begets a story of romance. I always feel when I taste it, because as we're saying, the notes are so complex in a way, and I love that. I'm not a big red wine drinker, so for me this one wouldn't be, you know, an all day like the Vermentino, but a couple of glasses of this for me at night is really just a very sensual experience, romantic and ruminative, as the guys are saying.
Yeah, I like what you just said. The notes are complex, and that again brings us back to music and wine. They both have these notes that give complexity to them. So Sting and Tony, is there something next for Il Palagio? I know Trudy had mentioned a sparkling. Do you have things coming up, expanding, or any other goals? No? Yes? All a secret. It's all a secret?
Yeah, Trudy, please. Yeah, there is something, but I don't know if we can tell you.
Oh, it's okay. I will. I would like to tell you. We had some of our guests wanted to just throw out their names that they recommend for the next wines, and the top two are Desert Rosé. Okay, and then Fields of Gold. So just think about that. Just wanted to pass that along from some people who are watching today who suggested
Desert Rosé and what?
Desert Rosé and Fields of Gold.
Oh, Fields of Gold. Yeah. So Fields of Gold would be what? A white wine.
Could be or a sparkling, a Fields of Gold. I just wanted to pass along their suggestions for you, because I know you have a large repertoire come from. But I've always enjoyed these wines, and I appreciate so much of, you know, you come into this place and like you said, it's got this soul and this history, but you know, you kind of breathe some life into it and bring it back to life with the wine. And I know you have the olives, and I don't think we have a photo, but you're doing things with bees and honey also, Trudy?
Yeah, we have about 7 varietals of honey currently, because Il Palagio is on 900 acres. It's quite a large spread. The honeybees are free to roam, so we have a large amount of chestnut honey, and castagna, right? So, Tone, is that right word? And my favorite is the acacia. And the day that I went around the estate with Paolo Rossi, who is our estate manager and was born at Il Palagio, and I said, Paolo, it's really important that we grow, that we have some families of bees here, because it's so good for the soil and so good for, you know, to have the diversity of flora and fauna. And he said, yes, we have some great acacia trees. So acacia, what is that? Oh, acacia.
Yeah.
So he showed them me, and so we moved our hives there around the spring flowers of the acacia trees, and then we went on to, in fact, we now have cherry honey, because we have a good amount of cherry trees that, of course, we have our cherries in May, and we have this delicious cherry honey. We have heather honey, millefiori, 1,000 flowers, lavender, because we've planted lots of lavender terraces. So wherever we have sort of like a new expression of flower, we put a family of bees. So we have like 75 families of bees.
That's amazing. That's beautiful. And Sting, I didn't ask you, but do you have a favorite of the wines in your lineup?
Me?
Yes, you.
Me? I do like Sister Moon, as I say, because it does provoke a lot of thought. But if I want a glass of red wine at lunchtime, definitely When We Dance. Everybody's favorite, simple, straightforward, and you know, you can drink quite a bit of it.
Yes, yeah, it's problem.
Problem and the benefit. Problem benefit. Yeah. I mean, it's a good sign, but not always great for after. But well, these are lovely. I love all of these wines and what you've been doing with the property, and that it's been such a great refuge for creativity and family, I think is wonderful. And I'm sure your surrounding villas and neighborhood are appreciative of having that passion come there. So
we have wonderful neighbors.
Oh, good. It's so important. So, well, thank you. You're taking time on your anniversary to be with us, and we so appreciate that. We did have a couple of people want to know if you have any tips for such great longevity in a marriage. I would throw in, especially in quarantine, but any.
Well, we like each other.
That's important.
Not me and
like each other.
You and Tony, right? Yes, Riff. Yeah.
Yeah.
I see the connection. I see it.
I think it's a sense of humor.
You always have to have a sense of humor. That is important. Well, thank you again for telling these stories, for sharing these wines. We look forward to seeing everything that Il Palagio continues to do, and we hope that you will keep making these fantastic wines with such passion. And yeah, thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, thank you for having us on, and to all of the folks out there who are tuning in and listening and watching us. Be safe, be well, and thank you so much for this wonderful support of Il Palagio wines. Thank you.
Sting and Tony?
I can say just thank you very much. Thank you, Wine.com, for hosting us.
You're so welcome.
That's
Thank you, Gwendolyn.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Yes, Gwen.
Cheers.
Chin chin.
Chin chin.
It's both a science and a form of high art. It's made from the combination of grapes, sunlight, rain, soil, and time. It's raised up in the moments that matter. It's wine. And we are Wine.com. We have the largest wine selection in the world, online sommeliers with free advice. And now, our powerful new app puts the entire world of wine in your hands. Wine.com. Seriously passionate about wine. Download our free app today.